And we are live. And we'll just wait a few minutes before people pop on. Takes people a little while.
I feel like there should be like a dun 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 dun.
I know.
Like some sort of.
I had my friend Nick, and I was talking to my friend, my guest from last week, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get my intro up in my little video, and he's like, no, don't do it. There's studies showing that people actually would rather not have an intro. They don't want the big fancy music. They just want to see you talk. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. But I don't know. I kind of want some more production value thrown into this.
I think we just did it.
Did we just do it? You sang? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think I've sang some pretty cheesy, like opening like lyrics before. Like,
yeah,
it's a Joey and Sarah show. Like something really bad like that.
Yeah, I like that.
But it's fine. You can do it.
Joey and Sarah show.
Yeah.
And then we like do jazzy hands.
We could do that. I don't know if I can do that. I might lose. Yeah, no, I don't know. All right. Well, thank you. We got a few people popping in. I don't know if my comments are showing up. Why aren't they showing up? Can you see comments on your left side?
I cannot. Can somebody please comment?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's say hello and something from y'all. Episode 23. There it is. Hello. Good evening. I love it. Episode 23, Alive with Joey, raw, open, vulnerable. I am super grateful, honored to have my friend Sarah Shepherd here on the show tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is lovely. This is my first time doing a live YouTube, Facebook combo piece.
See, Lil Wolf said no comments for you. I see how it's going to be. She's a little feisty. She's feisty, but I love her so much. Well, I'm glad this is your first one. This is what I love, the raw, uncut, just conversation. It's something that, I've loved for so long. So I thought we might as well make a podcast like this. So welcome. Let's start with you, Sarah. Could you give us a little kind of mini bio on who you are and kind of what you're bringing?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's such a fun. Okay. My name is Sarah Shepherd. I am a mystic and an entrepreneur. It's an interesting combination. It's an unlikely combination, but I'm sure I found they work very, very, very well together. I was in denial of both of them for quite a long time. And as life often shows us, the things that we're meant to do are the things we resist the most. And I grew up in a really small town here, BC, that was like primarily First Nations town. It was like not very many white girls in the town that I grew up in, and spent a lot of time on like a family farm. My dad was a stonemason. When my parents split up, my mom moved down the road with and so I had kind of dueling dads growing up that were very, very different in their way that they saw the world. And it was the kind of the classic divorced kids, lots of challenges, small town, lots of drugs, really, really beautiful opportunity to be in like nature and be with animals in the young part of my life, which is a blessing to me to this day.
Right.
And and I wanted to travel after that, and I wanted to kind of go and explore the world. And I did that for kind of a couple of weeks, and then a couple of months, I should say. And then I discovered, hey, sweetie, can you come back later?
I was just about to tell you that.
Oh, that's all good. No worries. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Can you go set something else up?
Sure.
Thanks. So when I came back from traveling for a couple of months, I wanted to go to school for medicine, but I didn't believe I was smart enough. My parents didn't realize I was blind until I was like in grade 10. And so I have a lot of like learning anxiety and a lot of, just like challenges that I've had to overcome about being intelligent. And so I opted to go to massage therapy school instead of going to school for nursing. And I really loved it. Like I loved massaging my animals. I loved whenever I touched people or worked with people would always give me a lot of positive feedback around it. And so I think I gravitated to massage just because it was like, I wanted to be loved people love massage therapists. It's probably like the most, celebrated career you can have. And I also got to study human anatomy, and the nervous system was something that I was intensely drawn to understanding more of. I think because I was really trying to understand my own nervous system and why my body reacted the way that my body was reacting to stress and life and our interaction with this dimension. And so I, found myself and my kind of like academic capabilities in massage school, because most people don't realize like massage therapy school in British Columbia is a 3-year program. It was at the time when I went to school anyway. It's incredibly intense as far as like the level of anatomical detail that you go into around the body and pathology and, what causes illness that massage therapists do in this part of the world is like, it's pretty incredible what massage therapists can do. But I learned through my years of experience that was because of working with the health of the nervous system. Massage therapy is incredibly powerful as a tool to help bring about nervous system balance, which ultimately leads to either, if you're out of balance, it leads to a multitude of diseases. And so if you can create some level of balance within the nervous system, it leads to multiple levels of healing. Yeah. And then I went down the yogic path for quite a while and ran a retreat center. And this is sort of when I started going into more like the business field. Was when I was 28, I opened a franchise that I founded called Crave Massage. And it was based on massage being like a monthly membership program that I would do. And I had 30 practitioners at the height of it that worked for me. And I really I fell in love with the principles of teams working together under a collective idea and what that meant. If we had a really clear kind of vision of what we were doing, that to me just opened my heart up in a really big way. And it challenged me to like educate myself more and more about all of these things that I didn't go to school for, right? So I didn't go to school for business, and yet I was really successful at business because I'm good with people and I understand the nature of a business entity has a lesson that it's bringing to the world. It has a vision. And as business owners, we are providers of what that business needs to be successful in the world. And it's so objective. Like, it's not like relationships. Like, relationships are this real art of coming to this space where we're really authentic with each other and, speaking on those deeper levels of truth. Like, that doesn't really happen with many humans that don't really work deeply on it. But with a business, it's black and white. There's spreadsheets that will show you, is your business thriving? Is your business not thriving? Are your employees happy? Are they staying? Like, all of those elements, it was just such a great tool for me to see what works and what doesn't work. And it pushed me to learn. And so, I really found that business has been the greatest kind of self-development growth process that I've had.
Agreed.
And then as I got, as I went through more and more years of that, I started to want to understand the mystical side more of what I was experiencing in yoga and what I was experiencing in life.
So I want to touch on that quick, because I think the audience here and the people here are gonna want to know for you, like, what was there a moment where that ethereal or spiritual side was like, wait a minute, like there's something more, like, or was it a few events, or like you said with yoga, like, because I know what mine were. What were your kind of turning points, or what were your moments of like, holy shit, there's more to this?
Yeah, I had lots of theories until I had what's, like some people would call it a Kundalini awakening. Some people would call it, a samadhi. A lot of people, I think I've explored a lot with drugs. I don't as much anymore. I haven't for a couple of years now been drawn in that direction. But for the younger part of my life, I explored a lot with exploring consciousness in that way.
Sure.
No drug that I've ever experienced took me as far into my experience of the universe as breath and harmonics. And so, I had this experience and it was just like, it was like a normal day. And I was working as a massage therapist in a clinic. I decided that I needed to go to yoga, and I changed my plans around for the end of the day. And I just had this like energy welling up inside me of like, oh, I'm just feeling really good. You know what? I'm just going to go have a kick-ass yoga class, but nothing was out of the ordinary on that day, except at the end of that class, when I went into the corpse pose at the end, Shavasana, whereas that you're doing this integration, my body dissolved in this integration. And it was this really visceral felt sense of like bubbles coming up from the center of my being that were like coalescing and then bursting as they came out of me. And as they came out of me, they carried all of the conceptual understanding of the density of me. It all just dissolved. And so as it dissolved and went in all directions, my consciousness went with it. And so I could experience like going down through the floor and going through other people and going up into the universe. And I was simultaneously aware of watching myself go through all of these experiences. And it was maybe 12 or 15 minutes of like that extreme experience of dissolving. And then I remember being a witness to my ego and just the pure ridiculousness of the ego and the ego's agendas and the ego's thoughts of, well, what would people think? Because I couldn't stop giggling. Like I was just laughing because of all of this, like the sense of dissolving. It tickled. It felt like what it would feel like to be like plunged into champagne. And there was just bubbles tickling me everywhere. And so I was laughing because I was watching my ego have this like commentary of what it meant to be a human and what it meant to be a human relative to other humans. And what does it mean to have, you know,
so while you're having this experience, your ego is just, and you're aware of the commentating, and you're aware of you being in the champagne, so to speak.
All of it simultaneously.
Wow.
Yeah. And that lasted intensely for a couple of days. And then it really started to dissipate, but it really started to dissipate in this way of, I also kind of recognized that I was like, I can't live this way. Like I can't go to work and have a job and interact with my partner and like do life like this. So it was a choice to come back to duality that I still, you know, this is 20 years ago, I still question like, why did I choose to come back to duality and to experience life this way? And I now understand is because I'm teaching myself how to bridge between the two. I'm teaching myself how to intentionally perceptually state change. And if you're just in the one state all of the time in that samadhi, you don't evolve, you don't learn. And our souls, they come here to evolve in this density. Our souls have the intention, when we make a soul contract and we come to this space, we come to refine our frequency. So I had a snapshot of my highly refined frequency, but it was to show me what I'm capable of, what all humans are capable of, and what our purest essence is. It didn't do me any service to stay at that. And so, you know, over the last 20 years now, I've been really playing with like, what are the tools? And like many people, what happens when you have an awakening like that, the thing that happens is you also have like a deep descend that comes down. And so you tend to go lower than the high point. Or sorry, lower than your former low point because of the paradoxical nature of the duality, right? Like you see this high element of your consciousness, and you also have to see this low element of your consciousness. Now, you don't expand in one direction, you expand in both directions. And so it's so painful to come back into it.
I know.
And then you chase for the rest of your life, you're kind of chasing that high again, right? Like every orgasm, you're like, is this the moment? Is this the moment I'm going to dissolve again into this state? Or, you know, whatever drugs you choose to pursue, or whatever, you know, falling in love, or, you know, business highs, or all of these things, you're always sort of chasing that state. And that's not how it works. And I've loved finding the gene keys, because the gene keys show you, like, you have a map to your awakening, and you have an imprinting that will show you the map to your awakening. And it's not a fast process, but this process will take you through all of why we have the experiences we have, and all of why we have the traumas that we have. And they'll show you your traumas like this little puzzle, this little like Rubik's Cube of like, within this is the awakening of this puzzle, but you first have to come to loving these trauma pieces. And it's it's just it's quite curated as to like how to move through it. It's far more gentle. It's like a really slow moving awakening curriculum.
Well, this is the theme right now, and it's so divinely timed how, we, got to meet each other, and then now you're here because, with everything going on in my life, and I know a lot of us are going through that a ton, with this eclipse this last, what was it, last few weeks, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I met an amazing gentleman who was saying something very, very similar to what you're explaining right now, and he said he's been in this journey about 20 years, and he's like, he got completely addicted. Like, it was the higher vibe, and it was the Eckhart Tolle, and it was all these great teachers, because they're magnificent beings, and they have so much to give, and there's so much value there. But he's like, you get completely fucking addicted to this high vibe, and it's just not, you can't. And I repeated this before, but one of the favorite things he said to me is like, how do we expect people to look up at the light of the sun and ignore the shadow that we cast?
Yeah.
We can't do that. And he's like, and so I want to know what your take is on these, and not in a judgmental way, but someone who goes into the mountains as a Buddhist monk and goes and meditates for 30, 40 years straight. And takes themselves almost kind of out of the human experience, even though I guess it is their human experience. But like, do you feel like you're kind of cheating yourself if you're just kind of chasing that all the time? Like, always trying to be in these states, like you said? Or is that their contract?
Oh,
I guess
I don't feel like you're cheating yourself, because the level of devotion that that takes will take you to states that will alter your chemistry, and they will alter your expression of your life force. And that's what they're doing, is they're wanting to tap into that devotional relationship with that higher expression of the God force that's within us. And in my opinion, what we're shifting through now, what humanity is coming through, is the opportunity to take that devotional practice and use it relationally with one another, in our jobs, with our children, in our life. And to take that same intention, where it was, how do I come to know the full expression of my being as God incarnate, as an expression of incarnated God force.
Right. Yes.
And then how do we turn that and say that my children are my teachers of how I am an incarnated God force. My boss is a teacher of how I am an incarnated God force. And how they trigger us is our opportunity to reflect back to ourselves within us where it hurts that we don't love ourselves. And to me, that is a deeper and a greater opportunity to really work with those illuminations of where we choose to close off our energy or to restrict our capacity for a full experience of life. And a full experience of life includes sweet, sweet suffering. Oof. It is a sweet, sweet experience that we close ourselves off to, because it's like, it's too much. I can't handle this. Society, relationally, we've been told that you can't, don't breathe heavy, don't get angry, don't, shake in public, don't, all of these things. Culturally, we've been shut down from our systems that are here to help us mitigate this energy that's coming through us and really to open to it more. But society has said, no, that's too weird. So I believe that this whole transformation that humanity is going through is really claiming like the weirdness piece and like the going there, and like, how do we, in a gentle and authentic way, interact with life as our teacher, every element of life as our teacher.
How has that evolved for you over the last, you said you've all been on this journey long, but since your first kind of awakening experience, dissolving into the floor, to where you are now, like, how has that evolved? I mean, I know that's probably a loaded question, but there must have been a lot of things along the way to get to this point.
Yeah, there was a lot of hits and misses.
Right.
Yeah. There's So, one of the things that I really like about the human design gene keys approach is like each of us has a profile, and it's kind of our pathway to our awakening. And the pathway that I have is I'm what's called a 6-2. The human design type that I am is a projector. So the way that I relate with energy and the way I relate with time could be summarized in those kind of elements. I can now see that I've learned, all of the pieces that I've learned around working as a Gene Keys coach. I can see how that evolution happened exactly how it was supposed to happen. So I have a lot of 6s in my profile. And so what that means is I come into my mastery, my genius in the latter parts of my life. And in the early parts of my life, there's a lot of experiential learning that's necessary to trigger the hurt that I'll need to take into this integration phase that I'm in right now, where I'm working with people and all of these tools, and I'm getting to work with all of these other spiritual masters, and all of my life time is coming together because of the big expression that's coming. And
gosh,
so
does that resonate so deeply for me?
Yeah.
Are we the same? Because I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, we could look up your profile. Well, you should totally check that out, because that's been a really helpful tool, is to understand where we're impatient and where we cause our own suffering, because we're like, society's told me I should be here by now, or I should, like, all of the shoulds. That one right there, like, if we just take that out of our vocabulary, we could create so much more of a relationship with ourselves in a much deeper way. But having a bit of a map really does give a certain level of forgiveness, to not just to me, but like to my son and to my partner and all of these people in my life, because I've obviously looked up their profile and kind of wondered, why are they behaving this way? Why are they driving me up the wall? And then you look at it and you're like, oh, that's really sweet. Like, wow, they're really actually grappling with a lot. Like, they took on a big mission. Holy cow. Wow. I just want to offer them more compassion for being who they are, and getting to see their sincerity and their genuineness. And so, I really love it as a tool to be able to support people kind of through these, coming to know our hero's journey, so to speak.
I love that. And I think a lot of people want me to ask now. Let's jump into Gene Keys, if you don't mind, because it's kind of been, we've been having tastes of it from different guests, but now I have a guru, I have an expert in that field. So I'd love for you to just give us a little rundown, if you could. Kind of what are the Gene Keys?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm not a guru and I'm not an expert. The man who wrote the book, The Gene Keys, is he wouldn't need it if we called him a guru, but he is definitely an expert, Richard Rudd. And just like a little bit of backstory on Richard Rudd. Richard Rudd is a student of many years of human design and the I Ching. And I found that to understand how the Gene Keys worked, I really needed to understand, like, how did he come to all of this mystical knowledge that is such an incredible teacher, and how does he like refine it down to like each person's imprinting and how it all works. So the backstory of the Gene Keys is human design. Human design, you said you had some guests on about
a little while ago, but you can touch on that too, please. Feel free to.
So the story itself is just such a cool story. There's a Canadian man in the 80s, Ra Uru Hu, who was originally Robert Krakauer, had this like awakening voice that showed him how the I Ching, the 64 gates of the I Ching, the astrology, Eastern Western astrology, the Judaic tree of life, quantum physics, and the chakra centers, the Vedic chakra centers, how all of those are all correct from different elements of time and esoteric mythology, but they're really portions of a map, which is a moving mandala of light, which is our auric expression, you could say. Because we're electric and magnetic beings, we have an electrical field, which our nervous system and our heart is creating. We have a magnetic field, which our hormonal chemical system is creating. And so it's communicating with us and the planets at all times. And when we decide to incarnate into this density, that is this earth density of consciousness, we come here to learn through duality. We decide that we're going to enter into this field of conscious perception, and there's a frequency of consciousness within this field of conscious perception, and our soul, our causal body, these other elements of they're in other places. We won't say they're above, they're not where we're at, right? They actually are where we're at right now, but this is where being a mystic gets kind of difficult to teach people.
Gotcha.
So there's a code from the masculine code or the yang force of energy that is a portion of you, and there's a yin code of energy that is from the earth. And those two codes, they come together and they are kind of like a doorway into this density that you're in. And you get imprinted by the sun and the earth and the planets that are in expression the minute you're born. So having your hologenetic profile, ideally you can have like the minute down the time. Not everybody can, but it'll spit out this chart that shows you, here's your hero's journey. Here's a map to your awakening within this life. And it'll show you the spectrum of consciousness of teachers that you're working with energetically. And so like the I Ching is this several thousand-year-old text, like between 2,000 and 5,000 years old. It, it predates the pyramids, and there's like, there's a lot of kind of academic back and forth on like exactly how old it is, but it's been around for a very, 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 very long time. And it means the book of changes. And the calendar of the year that the earth, as it's circulating around the sun, the earth moves through these archetypical teachers every 6 days. And every day that element of that teacher shifts a little bit. So you're imprinted with that teacher on the day that you're born. And then you're also imprinted with the paradoxical energy of the opposite to that, because everything about this dimension is about yin and yang. So we learn through one element, and then we learn through another element, and we learn through and they go back and forth like this painful ping pong of life. Okay.
Good way to put it.
So, you and I could be born on the same day, but in different parts of the planet. And we would have the same sun sign, but we would have different frequencies that we're working with as a result of that. And so a lot of people say, well, I was like premature, or, there's these elements of their life that they're like, well, but what about in this example? And I would say your soul always knew when it came in that it would be born the day that it did, because it picked this mission. So even though the doctors said that wasn't exactly what it was supposed to be, it was always supposed to be exactly that. And within this, we have elements of our conscious self that we're working with, and we have elements of our subconscious self that we're working with. So when you're trying to understand your chart, there's these parts that we talk about, and I train people on them and we go through it. And then there's these other elements that it's really more experiential, and it's more about understanding the environment that your body needs to be in to thrive, and the environment that your body is when it is in a thriving state, because they have teachers as well. And the whole hologenetic profile is mapped out in these 3 parts. So you've got an activation sequence, which is your sun and your moon. So there's like imprinting from 88 degrees of the moon. This is astrology terms. Essentially, between the 2nd and the 3rd trimester, your soul kind of binds its contract with your biology, and you get a different set of teachers for that time. And that's part of the subconscious teachers. And that's part of, you and I are going to go into that sometime in more detail to some stuff, because I've got some stuff I want to do with people. So we're working with these 2 kind of sets of codes throughout the course of our life, and we're working with both of them, teaching us, what we're here to do and what we're here to be. And that comes in the first expression, which is your activation sequence. And then we move through what's called the Venus sequence, which is like the 2nd kind of 3rd of the whole hologenetic profile. And that is related to how you're imprinted at 7-year cycles through the course of your life. So you have one imprinting, that's your kind of ancestral baton that's passed to you from, it's called your core wound, and that comes to you from all of your lineage, and that's the principle of like epigenetics can be seen in this way too, is that we have trauma that's passed down, but we also have a karmic kind of challenge to do in this life that we decided to take with us. And then we go running into our life from 0 to 8, we get an imprinting that has to do a lot with the essence of our soul. From 8 to 14, we have this next imprinting of wounding, and that's how we can close our heart, or the challenge is to learn how to keep our heart open, emotion. And then the other one is how we keep our heart open without closing it with our mind. And those are two kind of challenges that are this really beautiful healing mechanism of moving through, claiming how to love yourself ultimately. Like, I could just summarize it in this. If you can choose to love yourself through every single element of this suffering, you can keep your heart open, and you will not experience suffering as suffering. You will experience it as the beauty of life. But we humans don't necessarily like to do that. We have an agenda, and it looks a little differently than a lot of what our soul wants for us. And then, the last part, which is actually kind of the beginning part of the Venus sequence, is our attractor field. And our attractor field is like related to this magnetism that is you, and all of the things that you're drawing into you, experiencing this carnation, this one wild and beautiful life that you have. And then the final part is called the pearl. And so now you've claimed who you are and what it is that your soul is doing. You've claimed your healing and how to interact with the world relationally. And then it's like, so how are you going to show up, and how are you going to be of service? Because the whole trick of it is we're all going through all of this because we actually want to remember ourselves. Like, awakening is a collective remembering that we're all it is. It's all the songs, we make them kind of trite, but in reality, that is what we're seeking, is to come back to this space where the illusion of separateness dissolves. Yeah.
I love that so much. So you said something interesting about, with our suffering and keeping our heart open. If we're able to, go through this suffering as with our heart open, but, going through these stages like 1 to 8 or 8, a lot of my trauma was around the 8 to 9 year old self, and how we shut down. So what's happening there? Let's say we're going through this trauma as a 9-year-old, and we basically lock that down. For myself, it was 30 years before some of this stuff surfaced. What's happening there? Like, how would someone in 9, 10 years old keep their heart open during something like that?
Yeah, that's it. Like, in all of this, we're often taught that there's this is part of duality. Like, there's a rightness and a wrongness. Like, there is no wrongness in your nervous system responding with an overwhelm, because you didn't have another nervous system to attach to and keep you safe in that moment. That's really what parenting is we protect our youngins' nervous systems so that they can keep integrating and learning through life. And unfortunately, almost all of us, I would venture to say all of us, don't have the capacity or the tools to recognize our value as a mentor to our children in making sure that we're protecting their nervous system. And life happens, things happen. We did also come to choose a hero's journey where it's not meant to be, it is meant to be easeful. And you chose these challenges to have, right? You chose that your heart would be wounded and triggered so that you could just learn for yourself how to open it up. It's like, you can't heal yourself if you don't get the wound in the first place. And you came here to learn to heal yourself so that you can show the world how to heal itself. Because as you do it, other people see that and they're like, hang on, that's possible. Oh, maybe I could do that too. Maybe I could be a better person in this world and show up for the world, because I'm seeing these other people do it. And right now, it doesn't really make sense to me, but I'm really curious. I really want to know a little bit more. And what is so beautiful about the principles of the way Richard Rudd teaches the Gene Keys is that it's so much about the way that our nervous system responds when it's in this shadow frequency and this frequency of consciousness. It's either react to the situation and it's going to go on the offense, or it's going to repress. And so if it's not safe to go on the offense, and a lot of the time it's not, let's be honest, what we do is we repress and we build it into our body. This is the whole premise of what somatic therapies are. And this is the whole premise of what massage therapists work with, is like, people have trauma in their body that's causing disease. We work with people's bodies, and they call it muscle pain, or they call it headaches, or they call it whatever. I'll tell you right now, it's trauma that's baked into your body. And we want to move that through you. And you can do it through yoga, or you can do it through breath, or you can do it through movement. But otherwise, it's going to stay there. You can't just talk out what's in your body. You can reorganize and reorient to your experience through talk, but to really move through what's in your body, it's a different experience. So when we start to understand, like, okay, I've got this challenge, I've got this teacher that I'm working with, and I've either by my pure nature, I respond to this by going, I can't handle this too much right now. I'm going to hide this and I'm going to look the other way. I'm going to distract myself, or I'm going to create an environment where I don't need to look at this because I don't know what to do with it. It's like you're holding this thing and you don't want anybody to see it because you don't know where it came from and you're pretty sure nobody's going to love it. And so you just put it in your shirt.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it starts to rub against you and causes you. But now you've created this relationship with it where you don't know how to take it out because, well, what would people think? I don't know how to orient to this. So the spectrum of consciousness actually shows us that if you can figure out what is in there actually, and then see what it is trying to teach you and what it is trying to show you, you take your own frequency of consciousness and you start to elevate it through becoming more creative with it. So instead of it being this thing that you're hiding or this thing that you're trying to run from, you use your curiosity to turn that into a tool of like, well, what is it exactly? And if I can stay with what is it and what does it feel to have this experience, and possibly what does it mean, not from a state of answering your question, but from a state of just being open to the curiosity of maybe it's got some value to me and I don't know what that is. Your esteem changes. Like the way you refer to your body changes. And when that changes alchemically, we go through these shifts where our hormones start to send different messages around. Your brain starts to work in a different way where you can start to see potential opportunities for shifting it. And you move into what's called your gifting frequency, which is like your creative interaction with the world, which is actually the reason that you have the wound in the first place, is so that you can recognize like, oh, I'm actually really kind of digging this thing that I'm quite good at and I like to do. And then as we do that, these highest expressions, which is the acidic expressions, I like to liken it to the energy that is the causal body or the God force or the elements of consciousness that are your soul. As we start to claim our gifting, we start to love ourselves more. And the soul's frequency is of love. The soul's frequency is pure love. So when you want your soul to be embodied, you have to embody pure love. You have to love yourself for your soul to integrate with your DNA, to integrate with this biological expression. If you have any areas of the self that you refer to as yourself, that's basically like walling off a space where your soul can reside as your guide. And so it's through this living in our gifting and really claiming that we love ourselves from this pure space that our soul's like, oh yeah, I can drive this ship now. You know, it really can integrate and fully get into the driver's seat of you, and you will see life in a different way, where all of a sudden you recognize that your dreams are coming through left and right, and there's opportunities all over the place, and you're not searching for abundance because abundance is your state of being.
Yes.
And everywhere you look is this beautiful experience of life, even in the pain. Because even in the pain, you're like, oh, an opportunity to shine more light.
You see it, yeah. Your perspective changes completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So yeah. So when it comes to the gene keys and your chart, or what did you call it? Like
it's called a hologenetic profile. So like hollow, like light body profile. Yeah.
How old are the gene keys? Like when were these developed?
So Ra's experience, where the voice showed him how all of these different systems were actually a map, that was in the 80s, like 1980s, late 1980s. Yep. I want to say that Richard Rudd came to it in the late 90s, and his experience of a lot of his transmissions, he calls it these distillations that he got of how to take that map, that rave chart mandala, and use the elements of it, because the profile pulls out different elements of it, and then it puts it in the sequence that you use as your map for your awakening and your healing. And so that, you know, the first one I think was in 2004 was when he first had this awakening. And, you know, awakenings and experiences of these like mystical transmissions, they're similar to what I was saying with mine. But when he had his, he could see how all of these elements of this study with human design, how they all were this map through our awakening. And so that's why he made the gene keys, because human design's beautiful and it's really kind of neat. You're a generator, I'm a projector. We get to like generalize these elements of learning around our energetic body. Right. But what happens is they only take you so far. And I mean, I'm not a master human design person. So I'm not, if you were to go work with somebody that works in human design, they will show you a different way of navigating through it that I don't have the proficiency to share. What Gene Keys does is Gene Keys shows you like, no matter what type you are, you still have a map to your awakening. I met a girl today that I was coaching, and I have only come across in my career 2 reflectors. They're super rare. There's like 1% of the population are reflectors, which means that they're highly, highly open beings that came here to experience a lot of learning. And as a reflector, you end up taking on everybody's energy all the time. So what the analogy is if you want to look to the state of health of the collective of humanity, how are the reflectors doing? And reflectors typically are not well. And so I really champion them as these like highly evolved souls that kind of come in as barometers to show us where we're at. The Karen Curry Parker, she's a human design master teacher, and she likes to use the analogy of the different human design types as like, manifestors are the most yang and reflectors are the most yin in that swing of duality. So it goes manifestor, generator, manifesting generator, projector, reflector. So within all of that, it's if you look at this as like the play of life, the play of life could be likened to the manifestor's the producer. They have this idea that they're going to come up with. They hire a projector to be the director, and the projector goes and they get all of the manifesting generators and the generators to be the actors, to be the set designers, to be the ticket sales people, to put on the whole show. And the reflector would be the show critic that comes and sits in the audience and watches the whole thing and says yes or no in the play of life. Yeah.
So right now, these reflectors must be going through this stage of the game here on Earth, because there's a lot going on. So
there is.
Like how are they? I know, just being a sensitive soul, like if I'm not careful, how much I take on. So what are the differences in that? Like how does that look like if being a reflector? Like, is it just draining physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say as a generalization, that would be, I'd say, but about the gene keys is like that person, that reflector, they have a pathway that they're meant to navigate through that.
Of course.
So there is a tool for them as opposed to that generalization that I was speaking to. Yeah, this is the thing that, like, when you see sensitivity in your chart and you're able to look at like, oh, that's actually a gift in my chart. And it's the shadow of codependence and this expression of sacrifice. And so within that frequency of consciousness, we start out with these lessons that have to do with us having an expectation of the world and how we're relative to the expectation of the world. You play this role, I'll play this role. If you breach contract, I'm pissed, and that's how this goes. But if you start to interact with it from more of a creative space, it's like, wow, I, through the course of my wounding, have a really incredible capacity to feel into the needs of others. Now, if I want to go and rush to feel into the needs of others, is that healthy for me? Is that actually, from my space of discrimination, is that wise on my behalf? Or am I trying to meet my own needs by anticipating theirs because I need to feel love from them in order for me to love myself? And when you start to see these things going on, it does, like, you're still sensitive. You still feel that this person needs you to solve something, or is kind of seeking for you to solve something for them, but you get to decide, is this the right action for me? Do I want to navigate this dynamic with this person in this way? Or could we just be more curious and draw this out a little bit and start to understand karmically what's going on with one another? And then as we move through this, like the acidic expression of sacrifice is that consciousness is, I like to look at it like this. Consciousness has these like tentacles that are going out that are always learning. And as consciousness evolves, we are these tentacles of consciousness that are learning, that are feeding the evolution of all of humanity back into itself, which is kind of a hard thing for a lot of people to be like, what is this? But when you want to look at like the very, very, very big picture of what's it all about, it has to do with the density we're in. It has to do with this density of earth and consciousness. And consciousness is here at this density. It's all about evolution. That's what earth is about, is evolving edge, evolving force.
So where do you see consciousness going? Where do you see the planet moving into right now? Like, I know there's a lot of speculation, a lot of different teachers saying different things, the new earth, you know, all sorts of theories on what is happening. What is your take on all of it? I know there's a lot there, but if you can kind of give me, I
mean, the thing is my take on it, I'm not really sure, to be quite honest. I can regurgitate the human design take on it and kind of what I've been taught through Genekey, which is a pretty good story. So it's this philosophy that actually humanity hasn't been born yet, and that we're still in utero as far as the whole spectrum of consciousness around humanity goes. We're not actually going to be born until 2027. And a lot of this has to do with our energy centers actually mutating over the last couple hundred years. So 200 years ago, they're the energy centers that are like the 7 energy centers that we know as the 7, you know, the flags that you have behind you. Those energy centers, 2 of them split. One of them was the heart, and the heart became an identity center and a will center. And there's gates within the identity center and the will center, and they're part of our learning. During the time that they split, you know, prior to that, if you were born into this density and you were a Thatcher, then your kids were Thatchers and their kids were Thatchers and their kids were Thatchers. You know, for humanity, like, we didn't change very much for a really long time. There was a lot of repetition where things didn't really change. But after this mutation changed and there was the capacity to have a will center, the way that we interacted with this density was like, hang on, maybe I don't want to be a Thatcher. Maybe I would like to experience myself as something else. And so consciousness shifted because we shifted and we wanted to experience ourselves as more by bringing this will piece in. And obviously that was all destined as well. But the other kind of really important element that happened during that time was this solar plexus split into 2 solar plexus. So there's one that's called an emotional solar plexus, and it's a guidance system that uses our emotionality to read the tenor of our experience that we're having in this moment and how that's influencing our DNA and our expression of our DNA, as well as the splenic solar plexus, which is more of a reactive, intuitive, split decision type of guidance system. So each one of us has an intuitive guidance system or an emotional guidance system. And where we're working with, the other one's open. So when the one we have like adeptness and energy with, that's the way that we're consistent in the world. And the other one, and some people have both, but the other one is where we have learning in the world.
Okay.
What's really cool about this awakening or this evolution that's supposedly, you know, culminating in 2027 is that humanity will move into this space of honoring our guidance system through this emotional guidance system, and will become so proficient at it that there will be no lies between us, because my guidance system, which is in my solar plexus in my belly, it can read your emotional system. So what you say to me ceases to matter anymore, because I can feel, taste, know, be present with everything that is truth for you. And you can feel, taste, know, be present with everything that is truth for me. So you can imagine when humans have a different agenda where there is no lies between us, things are going to shift a lot.
Wow. And I think, do you feel like that's what you're seeing now with politicians and world leaders and the BS, is people are just seeing through the bullshit more than ever? Is this part of that shift?
Yeah.
So it's,
and the systems that have worked for so long, you know, like when I want to solve something, I solve something with the way that I've always solved something, right? If I don't know how to fix it and I have tape, I can put tape on it. I know that'll fix it. I know it's not the best way to fix it, but that's the solution that I know that has worked well enough for this, right? We are coming to this space where somebody's taken the tape away. And so now we're like, what? And we're mad because it's like, but we've always solved it this way. And so there's a lot of finger pointing going on, and there's a lot of blaming, and there's a lot of kind of like looking at the world through this space of, you know, it's all crap, or, you know, all of the money, education, like these big systems that have held sway for so long, they're really coming under like a, hang on, I don't think you guys have it together in the way that you've always said that you have it together. I got some questions about how this is going down. So the awakening that I feel like we could all benefit from it's crashing. It is crashing. I don't know when it's crashing. What do we want to do about it? How do we take this from the space of the shadow and get creative with it? What do we want to create in this new world that we're coming into? And even if it's just asking yourself the question of like, what would that utopia world look like? That's enough. You don't need to have an answer to it. It is so powerful to just start asking one another, how do we like brainstorm? Like, how could that look? Where we like support each other through healing. And we just show up for each other. When somebody needs something, we don't say, sure, that's $5. We say, absolutely, Joey, I would love to. That would be my honor. You know, we get to choose these things. And that I get really excited about that. I get really optimistic about those pieces. Yeah.
So back to the gene keys as a map. And if someone was to, like, as you know, if I gave you my information, you found out my gene keys, this is kind of my map.
Yeah.
Like, how much value does that bring to someone? Because instead of going in completely blind, obviously you're like, are they showing you kind of the future? I mean, not in detail, but like,
yes, 100%.
So explain that a little bit more. Like, give me a little bit more rundown
on
what that looks like.
Yeah. So if you go to like genekeys.com, you will find this beautiful website where there's incredible curated courses that you can take, amazing, amazing material. You can buy these courses. They are worth the investment. And if you're a self-directed learner, I would like highly, highly, highly recommend them. They changed my life and they will change your life. If you find that the whole thing is overwhelming and you want some more guidance, that's what I do, is I help people understand their profiles, and I coach classes. Yeah. I find it's overwhelming to people even just to do a reading with them. So I prefer to do like these weekly classes where I pull elements of the Gene Keys teaching into my class, and then I help people integrate it, and I help them kind of understand what that means through their life. Because I find so often we have these great, you know, tools, but then we kind of have to go human them a little bit, right? Like we get this knowing, and then we're like, all right, so I have this knowing, and then we go tell all our friends we have this knowing. But then when that next challenge comes to us, we're like, it falls down again. We forget. It's just the nature of this struggle a little bit. Yeah. So that's the way that I like to work with people. There's also, you know, elements of the teaching that on the website, there's like that you can order all of these different books that Richard Rudd has written about the Gene Keys. I should probably show this. This book doesn't summarize. This book has the 64 archetypes in it. And the archetypes are, they speak to your DNA. So even as you're reading this material, it's kind of meant to be imbibed like you would go and look at a beautiful piece of art. You know, you wouldn't go and look at some people would go look at a beautiful piece of art and be like, I don't know, I think it's imbalanced, or I think it's, you know, if we take our linearness to art or poetry, then we get a really dulled, blunted of booty being dropped into your body. But if you let it interact with you, and you let it interact with your cells without trying to figure it out, just staying in the curiosity and staying in the experiential process, not needing it to, you know, speed up or be different than it is, but really just to be in this contemplation. The contemplation does things to your chemistry, and it does things to activate your chemistry's capacity to hold your soul light expression, to hold that in your being. So I would say, you know, people that are in the beginning phases that they want to start working with this, get the book, look up your profile, start with your life's work, and just start there, you know, like just start with reading that chapter. Mine's 33. And the first time I heard it, I had this idea for a novel that I was going to write, and it was about, because I've been into the zodiac for a little while, it was about a main character, and this main character was going in and out of the zodiac wheel in every incarnation and interacting with different characters in every incarnation all the way around the wheel. And spoiler alert, you get to the end and all of the characters that it's been interacting with are the same soul family. And there's this big remembering of what it was all about. And that's what the 33rd gene key was about. So
no way.
I read that or heard it for the first time, I was like, what just happened? Like, this book just told me literally what my life's work is about teaching people how to remember the collective unconscious and how to remember it, that we're here to have an experience in the play of life. Right now I'm playing the role of, if I play full out in the role of Sarah, life meets me at that. And this is the part that I really can't underscore enough, is like the level that you bring to your life is the level your life brings to you. And that frequency is a different space than when we're in the shadow frequency. So 100%. In the transmission, he speaks about the 55th gene key, and the transformational path of the 55th gene key is us moving from a shadow state of looking at the world from the state of being a victim to looking at the state of the world from this pure freedom, this creative abundance freedom space, that we are here to experience our majesty. We're here to experience life in this way. And it's through this transformational path that we're going through this awakening. And the earth is waking us up also. You know, these things that are happening to us right now, I think we think a lot of the time that we're the ones that are doing it. And there's so much more going on than that. Our planet are interacting with our energy field, and our planets are like imprinting us and dropping in these experiences so that we can respond to them. That's the will center part, is like we get to decide how we respond to them. And it's great to have desires and be drawn to people. Karmically, there is these drawings that happen, and that's all part of the Venus sequence. Is like you start to understand that my partner has this keynote in his attractor field, and I have a keynote. Well, that chemistry that we create is a romantic chemistry. I have looked at my other partners, and there was karma in those other interactions.
So you can actually see if your relationship was karmic relationship or oh my God.
There's different types of relationships, and there's like some that are companionship relationships and some that are they're called orbital relationships, where it's like you can never quite get on the same page with that person. You really like each other a lot, like it just never quite fits. And there's nothing really wrong, but there's nothing really, really right about it either. You know, like all of these different things, it's all mapped out. And
I could feel everybody right now just going, holy shit, I got to get this book and just start researching all my exes.
Totally. It's the first thing almost everybody does, is like, hang on, what happened there?
Well, and I suffered. Well, that's just unreal, because how many people struggle with, oh, were they this? Were they my soulmate? Were they that? Then you have this amazing opportunity to dive deeper. So I'm definitely going to be buying this book.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's my companion book for sure. It's not something that you don't read it cover to cover. Right. You know, it's got this glossary in the back where you can look up like all the different gene keys. There's this frequency of each of them. So you can look them up and you can use it as a tool. You can use it as an oracle sometimes, where you just like, you know what, I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to read gene key 30, because that's the one that came to today. So it's the shadow of desire, the gift of lightness, and the city of rapture. And like within this will teach you all of the mystical properties of desire, mystical experiences that rapture brings about, and what's the science behind it. It's very scientific as far as like teaching around the science of mysticism.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, I'm going to buy it now.
Yeah, it's a good one. I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much. We're going to make sure to put all your socials in the description here for people who want to reach out and maybe do a little work. I know that you and I are going to be diving into some stuff, and I'm really, really it never ceases to amaze me, the universe and putting the right people in place at the right time. And with everything going on in my world, I'm like, these gene keys, I think, is going to be quite the tool for me moving forward into this new energy, from this death and rebirth kind of phase that a lot of us are going through. So,
Yeah. It's all
yeah.
trust and surrender. It's the thing that you don't want to trust and surrender to is the thing that you get to trust and surrender to the most. Like, I mean, you can read the book and I recommend it, but I can summarize it right now. If you can trust and surrender, you got it. That's it.
Well,
that's all it's
about. Every single massive breakthrough that I've ever been through or, had has come from a lot of it was just being pushed to the brink of completely almost giving up. But that was that moment where I was able to truly surrender.
That's right.
Because the pain was too much and the resistance I couldn't resist it anymore. And I want to learn now. I'm learning more to just be able to trust in the guidance and trust in the moments and trust in the people coming into my experience and why, and to be more open to all the possibilities instead of resisting. And because so many of us think we're in surrender or we're allowing, but it's not often that way. I don't think it's really happening.
Anyway. And we don't ask for help enough. We don't trust each other to ask for help from the right people, like the people that, there's people that are here in this world that are here to really help us. And they want to show up for us. We don't need to do it all on our own. And I think that's the piece that I so often see people miss is like the necessity of investing in yourself and doing the things that you need in order to thrive. You have to parent yourself. And when we're traumatized as children and we have a really hard time in our early part of our life, we don't know how to take care of ourselves because nobody taught us how to take care of ourselves and nobody showed us how one takes care of this human vessel that we're in. And there is a methodology to taking care of this vessel. And when you take care of your temple starts to hum in a new way. And that is so counterintuitive when you've been traumatized. That is there's this peephole to the other side of the beautiful, temple, and you don't even want to look through it because it offends you, because everything around your body, what you're learning around life tells you that you're not worthy of it. And that then becomes your big journey. That becomes your big mission, is like, how do I get creative with maybe I am worthy? And maybe there is something really amazing for me to do.
I love that. I haven't heard it like that before. How do I get creative with this? That's a whole different energy around it. Like,
this is a puzzle of life.
It's something to say, oh, I can embrace this, or I can sit with it, which we do, or let's see what it's teaching me. But how do I get creative with it?
Yeah.
Come on, Sarah.
Yeah.
You're
Think of it as a master. Everything is a master. So now you've got this master that's like poked you in the shoulder and you're like, oh, fucker's back. How am I going to get him back? How am I going to figure him out? How am I going to know where he's going to show up? And just, if you can turn it into being playful and being creative with it and drop the seriousness around it.
Wow.
Things happen.
Right there. That take the seriousness out of it is, I mean, not always easy, but it's so huge. And I talk about this a little bit about when we have an old loop of thoughts that come through, an old limiting belief, an old whatever pattern that comes through. When you're more aware, one of the most powerful things you can do is laugh at that thought. Is laugh at it. Like, not laugh at but just laugh at the ridiculousness of it. Like you said with your ego, you were laughing at the ridiculousness of the story.
Yeah.
Like, the laughter is so powerful. It can dissolve something like that.
Yeah, I also feel like I need to speak though about something that was really transformational for me. Was like, I learned the Peruvian medicine wheel. So the tools of the medicine wheel are this process of moving through change and beauty, and that we are not who we were even 10 minutes ago. We are not who we were yesterday. And yet we tell these stories and we cling to these old identities, and then we breathe life back into them in our life now. And so it's like we have this like loyalty to our shadow selves at times that we vote for in the way that we think and act in the world. And so when you can come to a space of ceremony around letting go of like shedding this person that you are no longer, and really, like, I now do it monthly. I like do a shedding every month of like, okay, all of those stories, all of those beings, all of those things. Thank you. Thank you. You taught me. You brought me to who I am today. You brought me to this greater expression. I so honor this. And I'm not that story anymore. I'm rewriting it. And how am I rewriting it? How am I creating this? And really committing to like, okay, now how do I get creative and successful and abundantly resource myself to make that mission come true? And when you look at it like that, in the same way that you look at a business and you're like, how do I set up this business so that it can work? Well, it's going to need some things. We have needs. Businesses have needs. So life is teaching us, how do we do that? If you're going to war, like you're going to war in life at times, and you're the general of your war, you're going to need people to fight for you. How are you fighting for yourself? How are you creating the space for you to really be successful and champion yourself? And that changes everything when you really start to kind of get like kind of crucial on like, how do I make myself successful in this? It's some tough conversations. I've had to give up some of my vices that I really loved because they were stealing my joy. Yeah.
Well, same. And no, that hits hard for me because same thing. I've come to that realization a few different times through this journey of, business owner or entrepreneur and how many of those old pieces just literally do not align with the version of me who I am here. The leader I truly want to step into, the leader I want to show up as isn't doing that.
Yeah.
So
wasn't
right.
We're changing the story.
Right. There you go. Wasn't. I like it. Well, Sarah, that was amazingly insightful and full of. We could do this. We could do a whole other show, I'm sure, on Gene Keys because.
Oh yeah, we have so much more to talk about.
So we're gonna chat. Yeah. So it is an hour show. I appreciate you so much. I got 2 final questions for you.
Okay, let's do it.
Because this show is about vulnerability, openness, rawness, I'm going to ask you to be a little vulnerable. Is there anything in your life, because I haven't asked you this question yet, I'm going to ask you to be a little vulnerable, something that you may not have shared that you think you can share with us tonight that can bring some value.
What's the question?
Just going to ask you to be vulnerable about something in your life that maybe you haven't shared much about, something that has brought you value, something about your growth, about your journey. I'm just kind of trying to push you into maybe expressing something that you haven't yet been able to, or something you have.
Yeah, I mean, I, for a long time, had a loyalty to not shining because I could feel that it hurt or threatened other people when I did. And I didn't want to be responsible for how that impacted them. And I knew that I was doing it. And I couldn't understand how to prioritize myself in the situation. And when I started to recognize that this is my life and there's no other more important person than me in this, and taking responsibility for that isn't selfish, that's not egoic, that is not all of these things. And then like really facing that there was parts of me that were having their needs met by me not shining. My fear of like, well, what if I do it wrong? Or what if I am wrong and I'm not that big of a deal? Or what if that means that somebody else is going to suffer because of the choices that I'm making? I spent a long time doing that. And I'm not saying that I'll never do it again, because I feel like as soon as we learn a lesson on some level, life's like, now here's another version of it and another layer to learn it again. But yeah, I essentially, I very rarely drink now, even though I absolutely love alcohol. It doesn't work with my body in the way that I want to show up in the world. And so that is something that I've needed to give up. I've like a love affair with marijuana almost my whole life, because I love getting high and doing yoga and like feeling energy and moving my body in that way. But it really became this kind of ceiling for me where I couldn't do it on my own without it. And I couldn't really center and clear my head in the same way when it was in my body. So that was like another like, I got to give up this thing that I love so much. And so it's, a lot of it is just like, I didn't want to grow up for a long time. I just wanted to be like this wounded part of myself, because these wounded pieces of myself, they didn't know how to grow up because they needed me to grow up and take care of them. And I didn't know how to do that. And it came from making better choices and just like doing the things that you're kind of told in high school when you have trouble with authority and they're like, you need to follow the rules and do what's right. And you're like, fuck you, authority. I actually just started to grow up, was really what it was. Yeah.
That was fucking beautiful. Thank you. That was so good. So good. What's making you feel alive right now? What makes you feel the most alive in your journey at this moment?
Oh my goodness. What makes me feel most alive is also the hardest thing. And that's asking for help. Yeah.
We got a lot to talk about, just saying.
Yeah. It's like being a master simultaneously and needing people to help me when I don't have the tools to deal with what I'm dealing with. Yeah. But that it's so beautiful. Like the aliveness comes on the like, yes, of course, I would love to support you in this. And then like you get to witness this new experience with this other person. And then you just like, you fall in love with them more and you fall in love with yourself more. And like life blows up in that way. And then you find yourself like going out and like, you know, walking on a gray day and there's nothing really seemingly beautiful about outside, but it looks alive because you're alive. And that's been the biggest alivening thing for me, is like coming to a space of like, yeah, asking for support when I need support.
Oh, I love it so much. I know, you know, I resonate with that because of the last, you know, the amazing people I've had the chance to meet and connect with over the last little while, you being one of them. Very grateful for tonight. Very grateful to know you. I'm so honored to have you on the show, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. So thank you, everybody. Please make sure to check out Sarah on all her socials. I have a link tree in the bio. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, please. If you haven't yet, go follow Sarah on Instagram and all her, you know, beautiful social media.
Yeah, you'll get lots of crazy videos.
I love it. We love the crazy. Don't worry. This is like you're in the right space. So
yeah,
hang out in the studio for a bit, Sarah, and I'll say thank you again for being here. And we'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.